questions on that? Do you guys know where you find how to fold them and what kind of fold they're getting? Can anybody tell me where they should look to find that information before they fold them?
Well, the banquet manager will have it also if you can't find it. So wouldn't they have the sheet of what they want?
So the day of, they're gonna have the sheet for like that event. If we're prepping for like the next day or a week in advance, however far we can go ahead, in the garage where you guys pick up the linens, right above the dirty bins are sheets, and it says linen order sheet. It will say white skirting or black skirting, white tablecloths, vice versa. It's also gonna have your napkin fold on there. So if you're preparing like a purple napkin in advance, the one that says purple, you'll look for what kind of fold is also written on there so you have the right information ahead of time. So, okay. This is just a request from Kelly and myself. You guys are super awesome at communicating with each other, and I really appreciate that, like when it comes to the time of flip and like, hey, we've got X amount of things to do yet tonight, but we've kind of run into a few bumps recently where someone says, I'm willing to come in later and get this done so we can all go home tonight, but that person doesn't quite know, or we don't expect you to know, but they don't know what the next day's schedule looks like. So either when they're coming in is like too late because the client will have already been here, or we have stuff prioritized the next day that has to get done, and so now we're putting too much on that day's plate. So I'm okay, specifically managers that are here and anybody watching, I'm okay with you running it past us. If somebody says like, hey, I'll come back and fold napkins tomorrow, or I'll come back and I'll set the dance floor up tomorrow, or things like that, I'm fine with that, but then just call Kelly or myself that night or shoot us a text so that way we can figure out if that's actually okay. Because we had it before where like Saturday night didn't do something, they were gonna come in Monday to work on it, but they didn't know Tuesday's event was coming in Monday to set up because they were gonna be here already that day. So we wanted to have everything done Monday and we had other things to work on. Is that all making sense? So we're kind of just, I don't want it to be like an assumption that gets us in trouble is what I'm saying. So if you have plans to do something at a later time, just call us or text us and check in that it's okay. Most often we can give you an answer right off the bat, but if you don't hear from us, then just assume work ahead, and then the next day we'll work on something else. So I appreciate that. 2 or 3 more things here on my end, and then we'll go through kind of your requests, setup, and just lists in general. We've had, I would say, probably 90% success with like, I'll give you a list, or the banquet manager will give you a list, you do it, you get done with it, super. Occasionally, as people are getting trained, I wanna kind of create this like habit of, when you get your list done, check in with the person who gave it to you and ask them to look it over before you go home. Because occasionally I'll have somebody that will say, yep, I have everything done, and we say, okay, go ahead. Well, then we go back and look over it, and either they weren't trained correctly, or it's just not quite finished in the way that it was supposed to be done, and so it wasn't like the instructions weren't clear enough. And so if we can have kind of that checks and balance system of like, hey, I have everything done, can you look it over before I go? We're more likely to not have somebody, for example, if the 2 of us have meetings all day and somebody takes off, we're more likely to be able to say, hey, do you mind doing it in this way because I just didn't communicate it to you how you interpreted it, or things like that. Does that make sense to everybody? So if your manager too like gives you a task and it's not clear, cut, and dry that you've done it 100 times, go back to them and say, hey, does this look like what you mean, or is this what you intended me to be doing? So that way we're actually getting things done versus finding out later like, oh shoot, I didn't tell you how I meant to tell you so that it made sense. So, and then kind of the last 2 things I have here, we just went through the work of, if you notice like this door frame here doesn't have any kind of a seal, but the ones to like the mechanical room and the janitor's closet have that metal bracket that go all the way through to create a seal. Do you guys know what I'm talking about there? We had to put new screws in on the one in the mechanical room because it's getting rammed into when we take the stage out. And so it basically sheared off the screws, and there's a screw stuck inside of that door frame. And so we can't like physically get it out. We spent a lot of time working on that. It's not gonna come out. If it continues to happen and that frame slides off, or that seal comes off, we're basically just gonna have to take it off, and that room won't seal shut. So it'll be drafty, it'll let noise out, especially because it has all of our AV equipment in there. Like if there was a fire, it wouldn't be fireproof because it wouldn't seal out any of the oxygen and things like that. So when you're taking the stage out, I know it's usually late and I know it's usually inconvenient, but make sure you're not bumping into the door. Like really take your time with that, because as soon as this next one shears off, we're out of luck. We're gonna have to like take this whole piece off, replace sheetrock, like it's gonna be a big deal. So we got it kind of rigged up for the moment, but just try to be mindful of that. If you really physically can't get it, ask for help. It's not too hard with 2 people, but when you're trying to maneuver it yourself, sometimes you just get kind of cockeyed and it's just really hard to get it in and out. So we appreciate you thinking ahead and helping us not have any future maintenance issues. And then this one I think is just kind of a general reminder before we start another busy season, is we love how much fun you guys have together and like how well everybody works together. Just be mindful as we get busier, there's probably more likelihood where times of working in pairs or clusters isn't probably as appropriate as times where it's slow. And so if you notice that there's no priorities, things are totally caught up, by all means do something with a friend, work on something so you can keep yourself a little bit entertained. But as we get busier and the focus needs to be more on things in the event, just make sure that you're thinking, could I do this myself and somebody else could be working on it, or am I making myself distracted by bringing a friend along? Or to the customer, does it appear like I'm super focused because we're having a conversation as we walk down the hall? Those sorts of things, we just really appreciate you guys kind of self-checking. Our managers, again, are gonna kind of help enforce or just make some suggestions and encouragement, so that way we're all kind of working at the same pace. But I know how easy it is when you get caught up in a conversation to carry that out into the event hall. Just kind of really try to self-check so that way we look our best and we're always working as efficiently as we can too, because the more event stuff we have going on, again, relates to later flips, and if we're more efficient early on, we all have a more successful night by the time that it's done. So, any questions about anything we just covered? Any thoughts? Okay, can I collect the last of, you guys need an extra second? That's okay too.